Okay, on to the next thing. What was one of your biggest takeaways from the Green Bay Packers 41-17 victory over the Minnesota Vikings?
I think my biggest takeaway was, again, offense, I don't think did them as many favors as they could have in this game.
Yeah.
I thought they missed some opportunities, particularly the first couple drives. The big fourth down, and then the field goal, I think, to make it 17, maybe it was, or 10-3, I forgot, 17 maybe. But I think they had more opportunities that they didn't capitalize on. So, I think overall, I'm sure you were happy that they executed the run game. That seemed to be, pretty much how they moved the ball downfield, with the exception of the Lazard-Cobb slants. But, I think the Watson connection looks inconsistent.
Yeah, shaky.
I don't know, for whatever it is, they just can't get the timing down on that play.
But it's like, isn't it kind of interesting? Like, once Dobbs came back and like once other guys kind of got more involved, that Rodgers all of a sudden just can't connect with Watson. I mean, it's like,
well, he put it on him. There were 3 opportunities. One was overthrown. The other hit Watson right in the face, and he probably should have caught that on the goal line. And then the other one was thrown out of bounds. So it's not like he's not taking opportunities down the field. They just,
but I'm even talking about on some of the underneath stuff. There was another pass to Watson that kind of was like way outside of his range. And I mean, the one play, I don't remember the goal line one so much, but I mean, the one where Watson, I mean, he had a step or two on the guy. I mean, it's a touchdown. Like, he had to slow down. And so it's like, I'm not really sure. I mean, and without Watson hitting those home run balls, I mean, Rodgers has been, I mean, even with that, it's still been really inconsistent. I mean, and I've been seeing people, and like I said, it's so interesting when the team wins, no matter how Rodgers plays, people on social media will say, "Oh man, if it wasn't for Rodgers is carrying his team. Rodgers." I'm like, hold on, guys.
If I see that much. I think at first glance in the game, I think the offense felt better than it looked the second time around. But that's my biggest takeaway. Is I still think they're gonna have to play just a tick better next week.
A lot
they're gonna
better.
have to play a little bit better, and the defense is gonna have to be as good as they were, which is, if you forced 4 turnovers, against any team, you're probably going to win the game.
As long as you don't turn it over just as much. You're absolutely right. Winning the turnover, but and LaFleur talked about that. He said, during that 5-game losing streak, they weren't getting turnovers. I mean, yep. So that's imperative.
But their defense was also not getting pressure.
Yeah.
It goes hand in hand. They were soft on the defensive side. So there was a lot of things, I think, in the defensive game plan that didn't suit them very well.
And Campbell was injured. So, I mean, there were a lot of things.
But, I mean, you're talking about a defense that's operating on a very high level right now.
No, they're playing
confidence
up to the potential that we all saw that they had coming into the season. And I'm going to give you 2 takeaways, okay? My first takeaway, since we were talking about the defense, and hold on, Joe Craig, man, I'll get to your comments in a second, and everyone else making comments in the chat, I'll get to those in a second after we get through these 5 things. But I want to just say this about Joe Barry once again, because I'm always a guy who gives credit. I will criticize and critique and overanalyze everything, but I give credit when credit is due. And Joe Barry, it was mentioned in the broadcast by Tony Romo about his adjustments. And even before that, I mentioned his adjustments. Adjustment Joe, right? That's what I called him, right? Adjustment Joe. And boy, has he lived up to that name 2 weeks in a row. He's made adjustments. Rick LM mentioned that, they were doing D-line stunts in the game. He can't remember the last time he's seen them be creative on the stunts on the D-line. I think he's adjusted his mentality, his philosophy from the passive, aggressive sort of stay back to just full on physical, in your face aggression. Calling a lot,
and they force Cousins when you can push a pressure in outside in, which they did, and force Cousins to step into Preston Smith and Kenny Clark. That's what they did all day long. And when he did get the throw off, he was throwing it into bad coverage.
It was a blanket out there.
Blanketed coverage with guys, literally 3 or 4 guys all around the receiver.
Swarming defense, yeah.
Credit to Joe Barry. Honestly, you couldn't have called a better game plan. Really,
credit to Joe Barry, man. And like I said, so I think he's, barring some critical meltdown over the next couple weeks, I think he's here to stay. And I think he's earned it. I think he's earned the right to stay. And you have to give him a lot of credit for the adjustments, because I don't think it's hard for defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators and head coaches to make adjustments, because they oftentimes feel very committed and justified in their approach, and they can be very dogmatic and stubborn. So a big credit to him. My next takeaway, as I agree with everything you said about the offense, but I always talk about that and Rodgers. So I'm gonna put the spotlight on the big uglies that don't often get enough credit, and that's this offensive line. It's young, but it's athletic. It's anchored by one of the best offensive linemen in football when he's healthy, right? David Bakhtiari, 4-time All-Pro. Rodgers said it. He's got Hall of Fame talent. He's got Hall of Fame potential. If they can win a Super Bowl with Bakhtiari at left tackle, I think that will all but solidify his Hall of Fame career. And this offensive line is made to maul. They are made to maul. You don't see many 6'4", 6'5" centers in the NFL. From tackle to tackle, these guys are big and strong, and they are broad. These are big maulers, and I believe this is all by design. This is what LaFleur wants to do. He wants to maul. He wants to run. He wants to establish the line of scrimmage, and he wants to punch you in the mouth. And here's an interesting stat. This week, in week 17, was the first time the Minnesota Vikings had allowed a 100-yard rusher all year.
That is interesting, isn't it?